Welcome back, everybody. Nice to have you here. First and foremost, I know this is like a book wrap up and everything, but I want to talk about this candle that I recently got. Book club, this is literally not sponsored. It smells amazing and I wanted it in the back of all of my videos. It smells like banana nut bread. And I love banana nut bread. Book club, because in the long run, aren't we all just one big book club? Welcome to May's installment of my monthly reading wrap up. You guys know how these videos work. I'm sure this isn't your first time watching one of these, but if on some off chance it is, I just talk about all the books I read this month. Before we get into, though, all of the books that I read this month, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Book of the Month. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. If you guys don't know what Book of the Month is, you guys are probably living under a rock, but don't worry, I will tell you. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing book service for readers. Their mission is to help promote new and emerging authors and help readers find books that they love. Their team vets hundreds of books a month and gives readers a choice of a curated selection of new and early release titles, so you can spend more time reading and less time researching. One of the best parts about Book of the Month is that it is entirely risk-free. You can skip any month at any time and you will not be charged. Plus, they have the best price for new release hardcover fiction. You can get your first book for just $9.99 at bookofthemonth.com with the code SUMMER. That is all caps, the code SUMMER, to get your first book for $9.99. Another awesome thing about Book of the Month is that from any month, you can have 5 to 7 book selections for what your book pick of the month should be. And this month, they have 6 new selections for you guys. Another super cool thing that I want to tell you guys about before we get into the selections is that Book of the Month just released their new podcast called the Virtual Book Tour. Virtual Book Tour has already charted within 1 week of its release. It is currently #1 in new podcasts in the arts category and #4 overall on the art podcast on Spotify. You guys can go listen and subscribe now on either Apple Music or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. The podcast is hosted by none other than Brianna Goodman and Jared McFarland, 2 members of the Book of the Month's editorial team. One of the best parts is that it is recorded live in front of a studio audience at the Book of the Month headquarters in New York City. A little insight onto what Virtual Book Tour is about. It gives a look into the minds of the writers that we admire and a treasure of anecdotes, wisdom, and fun. So far, the team has interviewed Adriana Trigiani, from the author of The Good Left Undone, and Kelly Garrett, the author of Like a Sister. Again, you guys can listen now on Spotify or Apple Music, and you can learn more about the podcast at bookofthemonth.com. You guys know that I absolutely love listening to my podcasts and that they are something that I hold near and dear to my heart. So this is absolutely amazing, because who doesn't love a good book podcast? So with that being said, let's go into our selections of the month. Of course, I want to tell you guys about my personal book pick of the month. So we're just going to open up this iconic box. My personal pick is The Lifestyle, and I have to tell you guys every time the awesome bookmark that comes with it. This bookmark is one of my favorites. It says, "You'll never guess what happens next." But I do sometimes, majority of the time actually. The Lifestyle, amazing cover. It's pretty sure it's about a girl kind of in trouble with her marriage, which is also super spicy. Pretty sure it takes place in New York, Manhattan specifically, and that has my name written all over it. Some of the other selections that you have for this month are Things We Do in the Dark, The Stardust Thief, Woman of Light, The Lies I Tell, and also the Wedding Dress Sewing Circle. So those are all of your 6 selections for this month. Thank you again so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget that you guys can visit the link down in the description to go to bookofthemonth.com to get your first hardcover book for just $9.99 with the code SUMMER in all caps. And you can also go visit Book of the Month in the link down in the description to learn more about the Virtual Book Tour podcast. Thank you guys so much again to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video, and let's get into what I read in May. Okay guys, so let's talk about the books that I read this month. So I read 14 books this month, which is pretty good, which is about like kind of like an averagely good month for me. I would love to read more, of course, but 14, again, I say this and I feel like every wrap up, but whatever you read is completely amazing. One book, or if it's 22. I'm feeling T Swifty today, I guess. 22 is the random number that popped in my head. Amazing for you. Love that for you. Starting off, we have Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. I said I wanted to read the Hoop series this month, and I read one of them. And to be honest, it wasn't because of this book, but I started reading, like let's see how far I am into, is it Hookshot? I've been reading it on my phone. Blockshot. Hookshot was the 3rd one. I am 27% into Blockshot, and don't love it. I've been on 27% for pretty much a lot of the month. Anyway, I did read Long Shot though, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.5 stars. Now, here were my thoughts on this book was that they're advertised as basketball romances, so like that's what I expected going into them. Yeah, no, especially this book, it was very heavy and there were a lot of traumatic things like that happened in this book, and it came out of total left field for me, like, and it's partially my fault because I didn't really research because I've been trying to kind of go blindly into books, and I just knew everyone loved the series and I thought it was a basketball sports romance, so I was like, cool, fun, amazing, awesome. And then I was reading it and I was like, holy crap, is this really happening right now? And it was. Just that threw me off, but I loved the couple in this book. I loved it. I of course hated one person in this book, but I feel like everybody should. If you don't, maybe get some help. But I loved them. Their relationship was so sweet, but it was just like, like the thing that I think threw me off to make it a 3.5 is that I thought it was gonna be a basketball romance, and it wasn't. I don't even know how to describe this book, especially kind of like stuff that happened towards the end. I was like, what am I reading right now? But I mean, I wasn't totally mad at it. I'm loving it. Sorry to switch up the angle really quick on you, but I just wasn't feeling that one. Next book that I read was Lila by Carrie Pope. Even though, if you look up the alternate cover for this, because I got this cover because the other cover is of a person and we know how I feel about that. I'm pretty sure there's like a different author name. This is Lila. If you guys weren't aware, this started out as a Wattpad book. So this was a Wattpad book that later on got published, and I had just always seen so many book talks about Lila and people loving it, and it was Wattpad, and you know, a whole big part of my middle school and high school was Wattpad, reading Wattpad books. So I was like, okay, let's take a walk down memory lane and read a Wattpad book. Yeah, I thoroughly regretted it. I gave this a 2 stars. This just wasn't good. Like, I'm not trying to be mean about it, but you could definitely tell that it was a Wattpad book. I think what the author was going for was like a grumpy sunshine, and really all it was, this dude was just a straight up a-hole. Okay, I'm just saying it right now, straight up a-hole. Like, it's not just that like, oh, he's kind of closed off, like I wonder what, no, like he was very mean to her for like the beginning of this book, like super mean. If I was her and I saw a stranger on the street that acted that way towards me, it would have definitely ended up in a verbal match, okay? And I would not have thought about him afterwards. I forgot that what Wattpad loves to do is to just throw a bunch of traumatic things together, like in a bowl. Like, so basically authors on Wattpad do this for some reason where they just throw every traumatic thing that you can think of and just stir it together like it's cake mix and serve it up to you. I forgot that they do that. That happens in this book. Definitely trigger warnings. It was just also like a little cringy sometimes. Like, the main character girl was just super cringy. Like, some of her dialogue, like, I'm sorry, but the use of frick, and just like how immaturely she speaks just got to me. There was like one main plot point, and then there's just a bunch of different plot points, and this book is thick. Like, this is a thick book, and I just feel like it took forever to get to where? I don't know. I was just confused as to what I was even reading sometimes. I was like, okay, what's the whole point? Like, honestly, there's kind of a plot, but then again, there's not a plot. The next book that we have is Alone with You in the Ether. This book I rated a 2.75 stars. This was like Book Talk's book of the month for May. I feel like one book that kind of circulates around Book Talk that everyone talks about, I feel like there's one main book, and I feel like that's what Alone with You in the Ether was. I posted about how conflicted I was with this book. In some stances, I was like, wow, this book was so good. But then in a whole other stance, I was like, but it was so boring. When a book is so hyped up around TikTok, I feel like you want to like it so bad. Like, you want to see what the other people are seeing, so you almost tell yourself that you enjoyed it. And that happens with me a lot. I notice that I will rate a book and I'll be like, oh, well, everyone's talking about it, so yeah, I feel like it's a 4 stars. But I'm like, but do you really? Do you? You don't. Just be honest with yourself, Destiny. You don't. The writing in this book, I feel like, is what is a huge part of the rating. The writing and the way that this book is written. pretty sure that means the same thing. It was so exquisite. It was beautiful. Like, it was so poetic. If you enjoy Madeline Miller's writing, then you would definitely enjoy this book. I do feel like All of You Blake does kind of have writing reminiscent of Madeline Miller. And this book is told from like a narrator, like third person point of view. And what I thought was absolutely, like, I thought was so well done was that there are different styles of writing conveyed through the story to reflect the main character's mindset and how they were thinking throughout the book, and I thought that that was absolutely well done. These characters deal heavily with like mental illnesses and stuff like that, and you can see that reflected not only through their actions but through the writing style and how it changes throughout the story. I thought that was absolutely, oh my gosh, I thought that was so good. The thing about this is that this book did make my brain hurt a little bit. It felt almost like when you're reading a book for required reading in high school, but you're enjoying the book, but you also are like having to pick the book apart, you know, because you know you're going to be having to write like essay questions and stuff like that on the book. So you're like picking apart the book, but you're enjoying it, but your brain hurts. And the thing about this is it is conveyed as a romance book, but to me, it just didn't feel like a romance book, but it was just so unique. Like, I've genuinely never read a book like this one. What I did absolutely love about this book though is what differentiated it from a bunch of different romance books, that this book more took the meaning of the feeling of love and intimacy through somebody knowing you inside and out, like someone just getting to know who you are as a person, and that being love and intimacy. That is my very complicated review of Alone with You in the Ether by All of You Blake. Next we have Darling Venom. This book, I rated this book a 4.5 stars. So if you're wondering like what the tropes and stuff of this book are, this book is like grumpy, sunshine kind of, and also best friend's brother. This book was a lot. Again, like, it's funny because I read Alone with You in the Ether and that was like advertised as romance, and then this is also advertised as romance, but it was so much more than a romance, and I feel like I don't hear people say that very often about how much more of a romance. Like, it talks a lot about mental health, and there are some other triggering subjects mentioned in this book, but it is kind of about two people who went through this same situation, leaning on each other and understanding each other and the two different sides of like what they went through. And it's a lot about mental health and about how mental health is so much different in different people and how it affects everybody. And it was just so good, but it was also a romance at the same time. And I loved the romance. I loved the people in it. The story was so good. The only thing about this is that I've said this a few times, that I've just read so many grumpy sunshines in the recent months that I feel like I'm kind of over it, and that I just am over like the grumpy guy being just rude to the main character. But even though I loved the couple in this book, I definitely, like I was saying, the relationship wasn't the forefront, and I actually really enjoyed that because, like I said, it took other important things, and just the way it was all mixed in was really good. There were also like different subplots going on that I also thought were really good, so I really like this. 4.5 stars for Darling Venom. Next, we're getting into my reading sad books video. That's like one of my latest videos, so if you guys haven't watched that yet, you guys should definitely go watch it. First book that I read was none other than Brightside by Kim Holden. I have had this on my TBR forever, and so I'm just so glad that I finally read it. I gave Brightside a 4.5 stars. This book was very good. This book is that like sunshine girl, and the book did it in a non-annoying, quirky way. You know, like most authors are like, make them almost too sunshiny instead of just like a positive person. That's who Kate in this book, so your main character's name is Kate. She was just an overall positive person. Also, like, the love interests in this book are so like, they're not grumpy, and it was just like a normal person meeting, you know, like it was just like meeting a normal person and then not being rude, and there's a little bit of flirtation. I swear I love that way more than grumpy sunshine. A little bit of like flirting at first, like not insta love, but just, you know, like attraction to each other. Definitely dealt with a lot more than romance though. Honestly, you don't even get introduced to the romance for a while in the book. Reading about so many different characters, like there's so many characters in this book, but not in a overwhelming way, in a like cool way where you're just getting to know all these different people and you're kind of building all of that up first, so you're kind of building the foundation. So if you guys love emotional books, definitely read Brightside. The next book that I read was Things We Know by Heart. I think I originally rated this at 4.5 stars. This is another thing where I'm like, Destiny, stop rating books as soon as you read them, because sometimes you just need a second to think about them time. So I did bump this rating down to a 3.75 stars. I did really enjoy this book. It was such like a easy read too. It was very short. I really loved the guy in this book. Again, I've just been loving the like non-grumpy guys, and he was just like a regular nice, super nice guy. And the romance in this book was so refreshing. Like it just felt so easy, and I loved that. And the vibe of this book, like when you read the synopsis of this book, you do not expect the vibe. Like they live in a cute little beach town. Like the guy drives a freaking Volkswagen bus. Like you guys know the Volkswagen bus that I'm talking about. Like so freaking cute and adorable. But the whole entire thing I would say with this book is that it tackles the topic of grief, and I felt like it did it in a very good way, and it kind of showcases grief as a teenager, like dealing with emotions as heavy as that, and kind of how you move on from things like that. And I really loved that about this book. So 3.75, I would definitely recommend. This book didn't make me super sad or anything, but I did think it was very good. The next book that I read was The Confidence of Wildflowers, and this book, I wanted to like it so bad because I had seen so many TikToks about it and so many people talking about it, so I wanted to like it. And I usually don't like age gap romances, but I wasn't gonna let that deter me. I was like, you know what, just look past it. It's not that big of a deal. Yes, it was that big of a deal. Once I started reading it, I rated this a 1.5 stars, guys. 1.5. Did not like this book at all. But the weird thing about it is that they have like super short chapters, so it's kind of a thicker book, but they are super short chapters. So I got through this book in literally no time. Like I said, I was going to look past the age gap, and I was completely fine in the beginning, or I was just looking past it. But then the author started doing that thing that Penelope Douglas also did with Birthday Girl, where it's like the I'm mature for my age. Like she literally says that at one point in this book, that she goes, I'm mature for my age. And then I feel like the author was like overcompensating with him being like, no, we shouldn't be together because you're so young. And then they were like making these things where it kind of seemed like she was older. Like it just, that to me, it's like, if you're gonna have an age gap romance, just do it. Don't try to make people feel better about the age gap because she's mature. This age gap is literally 13 years, and that's just a lot for me personally for an age gap romance. I guess that's not for me, but if it is for you, that's completely fine. It's just, that's a lot for me. Also, there is a character in this book, I'm not gonna spoil anything, there's a character in this book that I didn't even know why he needed to exist because he got done so wrong, and I was like, why did the author even write him in? Like, what was the point of that? Because it just made me dislike the main character. And also the writing just wasn't the best. Like, not to nitpick, I hate nitpicking, but also just sometimes when the writing really pokes out at you, like with Alone With You to Ether, it could be very good, or it could kind of be pointed out to me where it's bad, and there were just so many unnecessary details. Like this book would have been probably 200 pages shorter if all of the unnecessary details got cut out. Also, the ending of this book is what people say makes this book very sad, and it was just so unnecessary to me. Like I kind of guessed it a little bit because it's alluded to, and then it happens, and it was just so unnecessary. And then also the ending was just super rushed. Like I felt like, holy crap, like this whirlwind of stuff just started going on in the last like 10 pages, I kid you not, and I was like, what is going on? But yeah, that was The Confidence of Wildflowers. While we're on this kick, let's talk about my next book, which is Underneath the Syncmore Tree by B. Celeste. 1 star. 1 singular star for this book right here. Yeah, like I said earlier, I've been trying not to look into synopsises because I just want to go in blind. I feel like it's a lot more enjoyable that way. And because sometimes the synopsis low-key spoils stuff for you. So I just was like, I'm going into it blind. And someone had commented right before I started reading, and I saw the comment where they're like, I don't think you're going to enjoy Underneath the Syncmore Tree. And I was like, that's odd. Yeah, probably because they're step siblings. Like who I know it's on the back of the book because I have since then read the back, but who was gonna tell me? Who was gonna tell me that they were step siblings? The guy in this book was so unlikable. Like genuinely, he was just a jerk. Like he was just one of the worst people ever. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, like he's a good guy and like we should all like him. But he had no character development. I'm confused. Why am I supposed to like him? No character development. He was just a jerk and all of that. And I'm supposed to like him, and they're step siblings? really? And the thing about this is I wish Emery could have had more depth. Like, the only characteristic that we got from her was that she reads a lot and that she's sick. Like, that's all that we got. I wish we could have seen her with friends. This book was also just super repetitive. Like, there was so many things that just kept on getting repeated and repeated and repeated. And I just have to drive the point home that Caden was just the worst. And there is a literal point in this book where this man says, "I don't do labels." Well, sir, I do. And you guys are step siblings and it's weird. And then we have Pack Up the Moon, which was 5 stars, easily, hands down, 5 stars. Oh my gosh, one of my favorite books I read this year. I also heavily annotated this book. I don't know if you guys can tell. This is like heavily annotating for me because I don't tab a lot. This book was so freaking beautiful and so heartbreaking. Like, I wanted to cry my eyes out, but I didn't. The love between Josh and Lauren, like, oh my God. The love that these two characters have for each other is like no other. No freaking other. This was a beautiful, beautiful story. And honestly, that's what I'm gonna leave this at. Go into it blind. I want you guys to go into it blind and pick up this book and read it, please. Next, I went to Florida. I just got back from Florida. And on the plane, I decided to read The Upside of Falling. This is just a book that I've seen everywhere. Like, I've seen this so much. I always see it on my Kindle, so I just decided to read it on the plane. It was just a quick and easy book, and I gave it a 2 stars. Like I said, it was quick and easy. Literally, since I read this book, I have not once thought about it again. It was just, again, one of those just super easy, like, time-passing books, and it was just a super cheesy high school romance. You know, football player, she bakes, it's super cute. And then the next book that I read was Every Summer After. I gave this book a 4.5 stars. I really freaking loved this book. This book is absolutely amazing. A lot of people say that this book is Love in Other Words meets People We Meet on Vacation, but I would say it's Love in Other Words and The Summer I Turned Pretty. Like, that is literally that for me. The entire reason that I rated this 4.5 stars, like I said, I loved it, but it does not compare to Love in Other Words. It was like weirdly very similar, but you know when it's like very similar, but it's just not the same. It was so similar. Like, there's so many things that happen in this book that happened in Love in Other Words and The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I was just like, the parallels were just, I don't know, they threw me off. I was like, why is it so similar? But I still liked it and enjoyed it. The vibes, though, of this book were absolutely amazing. I love the main guy. Oh my gosh, he is to die for. The only thing is that I guessed the reason that they hadn't spoke in some years. Like, I guessed it. Like, I caught up on the vibes and I guessed it, and that made me angry. And then I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Oh my gosh. Emily Henry is just literally one of my favorite authors ever. I rated this book a 4.75 stars. It was so close to being a 5 stars, but the thing is that I felt like I wanted the relationship to be the forefront of this book, but I feel like I definitely would have liked to see more of them. The thing about Emily Henry is that definitely all of her books kind of always have something going on, like in the background, like, you know, like a different plot of something that the characters are working through, which I always enjoy. This one, it kind of more highlighted on like her and her sister. I felt like above the relationship in this book, and kind of her just self-reflecting, and I enjoyed that. Like, I enjoyed those storylines, so I just wish that they didn't overpower the relationship. But let me tell you, I love Charlie Lastra. I love him. He is literally one of my favorite book boyfriends. Also, I loved like the background of like the publishing industry and stuff like that. Like, I loved that as well, in their banter. Oh my gosh, Emily Henry knows how to write banter like no other, and I absolutely loved it. So if you guys haven't read Book Lovers yet, definitely read it because it's amazing. And the next book that I read was Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. Now, this book I rated a 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I actually liked it a lot better than It Happened One Summer. I don't know if it was just because with this book you just literally jump right on into the story, because you already learned about Fox and Hannah in It Happened One Summer. You were introduced to them in It Happened One Summer because Hannah is Piper's sister and Fox is Brendan's best friend. So you were introduced to them already. So you kind of just hop right on into their story. And what I liked about this is that Fox kind of was a deeper character. Like, there was stuff to him that Hannah had to help him with, and that I really enjoyed seeing that. And I just like them a lot better than Piper and Brendan for some reason. I just enjoyed them more as a couple, and the epilogue in this book was so sweet, and I absolutely loved it. The very last book that I read this month was Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I gave this book a 2 star. The thing with this book is that I can do dark romance. I don't necessarily have an issue with dark romance. Definitely look up trigger warnings. You have the stuff that was happening to them and I was just like, okay, that was like disturbing, of course. But then like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like their relationship didn't make sense to me. Like I get that they go through something very traumatic together, but it is her sister's fiance, and that just never sat well with me. I don't know. It was just like I couldn't get over that for some reason. It just wasn't the best. Like I wasn't all into this book, really. Like I had no problem reading through it. It was fairly short, and it was just like for me, so it was a 2-star. Those are all 14 books I read this month. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, give it a huge thumbs up down below. You guys know what to do. Comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I want to know what you guys read this month. I want to know what you guys think about these books, if you're planning on reading them. Thank you guys again so much for watching today's video, and with that being said, I will see you guys when I see ya. Peace.